Basically, we were talking about two events that are coming soon. One is the Maralal Kamo Derby, which we have dubbed the Maralal, the Magical Kenya Maralal Maralal Samburu International Derby, and this is basically, as the name suggests, a derby where we have a number of events lined up in the area of Maralal to basically showcase three communities: the Samburu, Pokot, and the Turkanas, in terms of their culture, in terms of their dance, in terms of their cuisine, and also culminating now with the derby. The derby is where we have the professionals and the amateur people getting onto the camel and doing a race. And then after that, we'll also have an actual marathon, 5 kilometers for the challenge people and 10 kilometers as a fundraise. And the whole idea is to get people to go and explore the northern part of the country. This is an area where you pass through in terms of you see some game reserves like the Samburu, the Shaba, Buffalo Springs, and also the Maralal Game Sanctuary. And these areas, the beauty about them is that they have some very unique wildlife species, and also they are very attractive in terms of the flora and fauna and in terms of the whole scenery.
Now, in the past, Kenya has marketed itself as a beach and wildlife safari. Kindly talk to us on what KTB is doing to promote its products.
For the last couple of years, we set out on two specific marketing strategies. One is product diversification, the other one is market diversification. Now, from a product diversification strategy, Kenya is well known as a beach and wildlife safari destination. But Kenya is not just about these two products. From a tourism perspective, we have a diverse range of tourism products. For example, sports tourism. Kenya is very well known in terms of its sports prowess. We also have cultural tourism, and this is the reason why we are partnering with the communities in Maralal, and also in November we'll have another event, which is the Lamu Cultural Festival, partnering with the coastal people or the Lamu people, so that we can showcase the culture of the people of that area. There is also the MICE, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions, and we work very closely with KICC to make Kenya a well-known and recognized MICE destination. And in the last about 1 year, the performance in this area has been quite encouraging, with Kenya being voted as one of the best destinations in Africa. The other areas also we'll talk about is adventure. And we've been bringing in people to come and sample the destination, experiencing things like adventure tourism, climbing of Mount Kenya, whitewater rafting in Sagana area, and also bungee jumping, because all these are events that are geared towards adventure tourism, and paragliding also in the Iten area. Now, sports tourism, which I talked about earlier on. Now, Kenya, as we said, is a very well-known destination when it comes to as a sporting nation. And we've been leveraging ourselves on sports so that we can make people come over to the country, perhaps also experience the high-altitude training facilities in Iten, and also see where the world beaters come from. And indeed, you'd know that some of the people who eventually became champions in the Olympics, they actually did come to train in a high-altitude training facilities. We want to diversify more and also add products like medical tourism, products like agri-tourism. And the Ministry of Tourism has also been at the forefront in terms of introducing a product like the homestays. So I would say that we are looking at Kenya from a holistic perspective, diversifying our products, but obviously leveraging on our strength, which is beach and wildlife safari.
With regards to the ongoing Eurozone debt crisis, and this has been the traditional market for Kenya, what role is KTB playing to diversify the markets?
When it comes to the second strategy, which I mentioned earlier on, which is market diversification, traditionally we have had our main source markets usually or mainly being Europe and the US. Now, these are the markets that contribute number 1, 2, 3, and 4. But in the last couple of years, again, we set out to diversify our markets, our source markets. And we started investing a lot in the emerging markets. Here I'll be talking about the rest of Asia, the Asian countries. We'll also be talking about the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the regional markets of the rest of Africa. And what we've seen is that the main growth drivers in the last couple of years actually has been these regions that we would call the emerging markets. And this comprises mainly of the Asian countries, with India now being one of our top 5 markets, actually being number 5. And we've also seen phenomenal growth from countries like China. We've seen phenomenal growth from countries like the Middle East and also from the East European countries, where in fact to date we have some charters that are already operating from those markets directly into the country. And also South Korea, which recently, as you know, launched a direct flight from Incheon in Seoul to Nairobi. We've also seen the regional markets, especially a country like Uganda, countries like Tanzania, and also Ethiopia, growing in numbers and also adding onto into the overall kitty, and of course South Africa. So we'll say that our efforts to diversify our market is already bearing fruit, and we're seeing growth coming from some of these emerging markets. There's still room for growth, and we still continue growing those markets so that we can, at the end of the day, get the numbers that we think and the revenue that we think we should be getting.
And of course, Mr. Muriithi, tourism controls about 10% of the country's GDP. What role is KTB playing to tap into the domestic market? I understand there's something that you're doing.
We instituted a cluster called domestic tourism about 1.5 years ago. And from that perspective, we started getting a specific budget directly for domestic tourism. And we also had staffing specifically geared towards promoting domestic tourism. Now, what I'm glad to say is that we've had some very strategic partnerships with a lot of the local travel trade and also with the media in this country. And as a result of this, we've seen the market getting to learn about other parts of the country, and also the market visiting different parts of the country. And when you look at the economic survey for the last 2 years or so, we've seen the increase in bed occupancy by the domestic market. And this in itself is very positive. We know there's potential to grow more, but we are quite keen to grow this sector. And indeed, we see some very positive progress that has been made in these areas, but there's still a lot of room for us to grow more.
Now, last year, the industry raked in 98 billion shillings, and it was one of the best performing years for the country. What are the projections for 2012?
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's a bit difficult for me to give specific projections because, as you know, tourism is a very sensitive industry, and we never like to put our numbers or our figures and say, this is exactly what we expect. But I think looking at the situation, and despite the challenges also that we've seen, because we've had quite a bit of challenges, we are hoping that we'll be able to do something close to what we did last year, if not slightly more.